The Foreign Visitors View channel continues its journey through Portugal along the border with Spain.
Today you will visit the highest mountainous city in Portugal.
And you will also find out why Brazil turned out to be Portuguese. Join us for this adventure.
Although the high mountains of the Serra da Estrela range serve as a natural barrier between the countries of the Iberian Peninsula, the borders of Portugal had to be defended. And for this, a series of strongholds with castles was created.
The flat-topped mountain at the headwaters of the Moultrie river was ideal for such a castle. Therefore, at an altitude of 1056 meters above sea level, about 820 years ago, a city was built, called Guarda, that is, the Defender.
This is the view from the highest point in this city, in winter. And in summer,
it is raining, so the historic center of Guarda on the hill is still poorly visible.
To wait out the rain and to get some food, we, just like in the city of Guimarães, visit the little supermarket.
40 minutes later, the sky is partially blue.
Well, here you are, good weather.
And while we drive up the hill where the city was born, let's start a story about what Guarda is famous for.
Guarda is called the city of 5F, based on 5 words in Portuguese.
Forte is strong because of its castle towers, city walls and geography.
Farta is abundant thanks to the fertile soils of the Montague Valley. By the way, the city of Coimbra is located on the same river. We will talk about the city later on.
Fria is cold. Snow is not uncommon here.
Phil is faithful because the commander of Guarda garrison, Álvaro Cabral, who was great-grandfather of Pedro Cabral, the discoverer of Brazil during the dynastical crisis of 1383-1385, discussed in our film about the city of Chaves, refused to give the keys to the city to the king of Castile.
Formosa is beautiful. It is so called for the beauty of the historical core of the city. We'll check it out soon.
Behind the hotel building on the right, among the clouds, the land is no longer visible, and we continue to drive up. And we recalled Brazil not in vain.
The people of Guimarães believe that this is where Portugal was born. Whether this is true, you can find out by watching our film about this city.
The inhabitants of Guarda believe that it was in their city that Brazil was born.
The fact is that the outstanding Portuguese chronicler and diplomat Rui de Pina not only was born in Guarda, but also stayed in his hometown to work out the terms of the Treaty of Tordesillas.
This agreement between Spain and Portugal on the division of spheres of influence in the world was signed in 1494, shortly after the return of Columbus, who discovered America.
At the beginning of the era of the great geographical discoveries, only Portugal and Spain had ships and sailors for long voyages.
Therefore, these two countries decided ahead of time to share the skin of the still undiscovered jaguar.
In 1479, that is 15 years earlier, the Treaty of Alcoçovas was signed. According to it, Portugal was assigned the right to sail, conquer and trade in the Atlantic Ocean, south of the Canary Islands, including territories that were to be discovered later on. This treaty was approved as the highest spiritual authority by Pope Sixtus IV.
Under this agreement, the Spaniards could no longer sail south without Portugal's permission. Therefore, they equipped Columbus' expedition to the west to India, but he discovered America instead of India.
But the lands discovered by Columbus turned out to be south of the demarcation line, that is, in the Portuguese zone.
To resolve the problem, Pope Alexander VI, a native of Spain, announced that all the lands that Spain discovered or would discover west of the meridian which runs 100 leagues, that is 480 kilometers, west of the Cape Verde Islands should belong to it, that is, to Spain.
New lands that were going to be discovered in the areas east of this line will belong to Portugal. And this rule did not apply to the territories already under the dominion of Christian countries.
This verdict did not please the Portuguese King João II.
Therefore, he entered into negotiations with King Ferdinand II of Aragon and his wife, Queen Isabella I of Castile, in order to move this line to the west.
From Portugal, the negotiations were led by Rui de Pina, who insisted that the demarcation line passing through both poles and the entire Atlantic Ocean be moved.
Pope Alexander VI's line was moved to 270 leagues, or 1,300 kilometers west. The seas and land to the east of this line will belong to Portugal, and those to the west to Spain.
At the time of the treaty signature, none of the Europeans knew which lands lay south of those discovered by Columbus.
In 1500, as a result of the expedition of Pedro Cabral, which we will talk about in the film about the city of Belmont, it became obvious that Spain gifted Brazil to Portugal.
Such a favorable result of the negotiations for Portugal was due to the fact that the Portuguese side was better prepared for them.
And this preparation was done in Guarda.
So we got to the historical part of Guarda.
We park near the Church of Misericordia, Compassion in English, and go to explore the city.
The Misericordia Church with two bell towers was built in the Baroque style in the 18th century, when Guarda finally expanded beyond the medieval walls.
Perhaps that is why there was a sudden change in architectural style, different from the Gothic Manueline style of the rest of the historical part of the city.
The construction was carried out during the reign of King João V, whose coat of arms can be seen at the top of the portal. At the top of the facade, in a niche, there is an image of the patroness of the temple, the Virgin of Mercy.
The Baroque altars stand out inside the one-nave building.
We are moving to the medieval part of Guarda, which was surrounded by fortress walls.
4 gates have been preserved from these walls.
Very close to the Church of Misericordia is Torre dos Ferreiras, that is, the Tower of Blacksmith.
It was built in the 13th century, during the reign of King Danish I, about whom we talked in the film on the city of Miranda do Douro.
The building is both a tower and a gate at the same time.
In this case, the passage through the gate is not straight, but L-shaped.
There is a small chapel on the inner corner of this passage.
After renovations were completed in November 2020, you can climb to the top of the blacksmith's tower and observe the city.
Between two are the gates of the medieval wall, the first of which is called Porta de Erva, that is, Herbal Gate.
And the second, Porta del Rey, that is, the Royal Gate.
There was the Jewish quarter.
Now, there are no large groups of Jews in the city, with mere traces of their stay left behind.
Jews have lived in Guarda since the 13th century, and there is a romantic story associated with them that changed the history of Portugal.
The respected shoemaker Pires Esteves lived in the Jewish quarter and had a daughter, Inês.
The master of the Order of Aves, João, the illegitimate son of King Pedro I, came to Guarda. he fell in love with Ines, and they had a son, Afonso, although they didn't formalize their relationship.
The shoemaker did not like this very much. He even wanted to kill the adulterer, but did not dare to touch the king's son, especially since Zhao cared about the son of Ines. But in protest, the shoemaker decided not to shave anymore, and for this he was nicknamed Barbadao.
The son of João and Ines grew up and became Duke of Bragança. We talked about him in the film about the city of SYBS.
And his descendant became King of Portugal under the name of João IV.
Guarda was founded in 1199 by the second king of Portugal named Sancho I. He was nicknamed the Populator, Sancho I or Povoador, because he pushed the boundaries of the territory where the Portuguese lived far to the south.
For example, with the help of the Crusaders, this king captured the city of SYBS, and we saw a monument to Sancho in the city.
Guarda also has a monument to King Sancho I. It was created in 1955 and first stood on the square in front of the cathedral.
We entered the square along the Rue de Tour Street, that is the Tower Street, right from the blacksmith's tower.
During the reconstruction of the square in 2005, the monument to the king was moved closer to the cathedral, where we barely saw it.
The history of Guarda Cathedral begins in 1199, when King Sancho I received permission from the Pope to transfer the center of the diocese to Guarda, from the nearby but ravaged town of Egitani.
By the way, Egitania was later renamed Edania Apelia, the town which we also visited.
The first Romanesque building of Guarda Cathedral was soon demolished and replaced by another church, built on the site now occupied by the Misericordia Church.
This second cathedral of modest size was built in the 13th century but was demolished in the second half of the 14th century by order of King Fernando I during the wars with Castile. Then they feared that the invaders would be able to ascend the fortress wall from the roof of the cathedral.
The third and the final building of Guarda Cathedral began to be built in 1390, during the reign of King Zhao I.
This is the same João who, before becoming king, often visited the Jewish quarter of Guarda.
But the construction of the cathedral was completed only in the middle of the 16th century, during the reign of King Zhao III.
By the way, we saw the monument to Zhao III in Coimbra because this king did a lot for the development of this city.
At the beginning of the 15th century, the Gothic apse of the cathedral in Guarda was built.
The nave was built in the Monastery style. This style originated in Portugal under King Manuel the Happy, influenced by the architecture of the temples of India.
At this stage of construction, the work was influenced by the architecture of the Batalha Monastery, which was being built at the same time.
Manueline style is considered the Portuguese Renaissance. Spiral columns and whimsical decorations are its hallmarks.
At the very top of the cathedral, gargoyles peep out of the walls.
Over the next centuries, the cathedral was enriched with other elements. Despite the artistic value of some of these additions, such as the Baroque organ, they were all removed during the reconstruction carried out in 1898 by the architect Rosenda Carvalheiro. He aimed to restore the cathedral to its original Gothic Manueline appearance.
A school building is located near the cathedral. Previously, it housed the National Lyceum of Guarda, founded in 1855.
And even earlier, from the 14th century, there was a monastery of Santa Clara.
At the highest point of the hill, on a granite rock, there are the remains of the keep, the heart of the castle.
This tower was built at the end of the 13th century, during the reign of King Afonso II.
We are going down the hill along the Serpentine on foot, and at a sharp turn in the road we see the chapel of St. Pedro.
It was built in the 19th century on the site of an older temple.
We return to the car and drive in the rain to see other sites in Guarda.
On the left is a complex of buildings constructed at the beginning of the 17th century. It housed the bishop's palace, the church, and the seminary.
Now, the building of the seminary houses the Guarda Museum. It was created in 1940, but only opened to the public in 1985. We saw this museum from different angles during our walking tour.
We drive further, and on the left we see a bust on the terrace overlooking the city. This is a bust neither of a king nor a general, but of a medical doctor, the pulmonologist Lopo José de Carvalho.
After graduating from the University of Coimbra, he came to Guarda to work as a municipal physician.
Here he became interested in the issues of lung disease treatment, took part in the creation of the first sanatorium in Portugal and became its first director.
Here is the territory of this sanatorium.
In the late 19th century, it was believed that for the treatment of pulmonary tuberculosis, patients should be housed in mountainous areas with dry air and high ozone concentrations.
One of the enthusiasts of this idea was the physician José Sous Martins. He went on an expedition to the Serra de Estrela mountains and found this place ideal for creating a sanatorium.
This idea was financially supported by Queen Amélia of Portugal. In 1907, the sanatorium was inaugurated in the presence of the king and the queen.
The sanatorium received the name of Sousa Martins, and his bust was erected on the territory.
In fact, a small town was built, where there was even a post office, and we parked just near the post office building.
Nearby, we find a park with the fountain of Saint Andre, built in the 18th century.
Now on the territory of the sanatorium there is a health park and various medical institutions, for example the Department of Psychiatry and also the High School of Health.
To leave the city, we are again moving along the Serpentine.
And the valley below opens before our eyes.
On the square on the descent, we see a monument in the form of the Latin letter G, the first letter of the city's name.
In Guarda, they like to decorate squares with various signs and structures, and we have repeatedly come across them.
Road signs tell us that if we go to the right, to the west, we will get to the Atlantic Ocean, to the city of Aveiro.
And we will really get there, but only in a few days.
If you go to the left, to the east, you will find yourself in Spain. But we already visited this country when we were driving from the city of Bragança to the city of Miranda de Douro.
And you can already watch films about both of these Portuguese cities.
In the meantime, we, our guides,
Konstantin Krasovsky,
Tatiana Andreeva
and Leo Krasowski
are moving south through an underground tunnel.
to get to the city of Belmonte.
And the video about this city, those who have subscribed to the channel Foreign Visitors View will be able to see it in the near future.
Share the video with your friends and write in the comments what you would like to get to know about next time.